I was raised to be the understanding one. That was the unspoken rule in our house, etched into every dinner conversation, every late night family meeting, every disappointed glance from my parents. He's struggling. You have to understand. They didn't even say my brother's name half the time. It was always just he, a vague cloud of excuses attached to a very real person who somehow managed to orbit our family like a disaster waiting to happen. And me? I was the anchor, the steady one in one. The child who didn't cause problems, didn't demand too much, didn't talk back. The one who knew better. I understood when he dropped out of college 2 semesters in because he wasn't connecting with the material. I understood when he wrecked his second car and my dad gave him mine, without asking. I understood when he moved back home again, after losing another job for not being the right fit. And again. And again. Every time he stumbled, the family bent around him like a protective shield. There was always a reason. Depression, anxiety, the wrong crowd, bad timing, unfair bosses, harsh professors. The world was always out to get him, and it was my job to fill in the gaps. And whenever I questioned it, even gently, I was met with the same refrain. He's going through a lot. You need to be patient. You've always been stronger than him. Stronger, not more loved, not more supported, just stronger. Which in our house meant I was the one expected to carry more and complain less. It became muscle memory. The second something went wrong, I braced myself for impact, not because I had done anything wrong, but because I knew I'd be the one cleaning it up. I'd be the one giving up weekends, loaning money, driving him to court dates, and explaining his behavior to relatives like I was his PR rep. When my brother lost his third job in 2 years, this time for showing up high, I was the one who drove him to his rehab sessions. My parents said they were too busy. And he listens to you, my mom added, like that made it okay. Like being someone's emotional babysitter was a badge of honor. I didn't ask for that role, I was just assigned it. And I accepted it. For years. I gave up a summer internship to stay close and help out when he spiraled. I lent him over $2,000 across 3 years. Never saw a cent back. I gave up a trip I had planned for months just so he could use the money for rent. I gave him my bedroom when he got kicked out of his apartment, slept on the couch for 3 weeks until he left again. I made excuses for him at family gatherings, covered for his absences, cleaned up his messes, smiled through the embarrassment. And in return, I got silence. No thank you, no recognition, only the next emergency, the next expectation. The worst part wasn't even the sacrifices. It was that no one ever acknowledged them, not even once. It wasn't kindness, it was just assumed, like being the reliable one somehow made me undeserving of concern. And if I ever pushed back, I was selfish. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I said I was tired, but your brother has it so much harder. It didn't matter that I worked 2 jobs in college. Didn't matter that I never once asked them for help. Didn't matter that I showed up to every family function, every hospital visit, at every damn crisis. Quietly, reliably, invisibly. Because at the end of the day, I was fine, right? I was the one who could handle it. It wasn't just emotional support either. There were real, tangible things I gave up without hesitation, without recognition. When my brother got arrested for shoplifting, I was the one who picked him up at 3 a.m. When he got dumped for cheating, I was the one he crashed with. When he accidentally wrecked the family car, I was the one who used my savings to help cover the deductible because they didn't want his insurance to go up. No one asked me if I could afford it. No one offered to pay me back. We're a family, they'd say. We help each other. But we didn't mean him helping me. It never went both ways. I tried not to resent him. I really did. He wasn't evil, just entitled, coddled, unchallenged. But it's hard not to feel anger when the person destroying the room is handed a pillow while the one cleaning up the pieces is told to smile more. It wore me down. Not in a single dramatic moment, but little by little. I stopped answering calls on the first ring. I stopped offering help before they even asked. I started spending holidays with friends instead of family. And I started wondering, what would happen if I didn't understand this time? If I didn't carry it all? If I let it fall apart? Would they finally see me? Would they finally realize what I'd been holding up all along? Or would they just let me drop and never look back? They always asked me to understand him, but never once tried to understand me. Being the good child sounds noble, until you realize it's just code for the one we expect to suffer in silence. That was me. The gold standard, the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who was so mature for their age, as if maturity was a medal instead of a muzzle. I was offered a full scholarship my senior year, a program that would have taken me across the country into the career I'd dreamed of since I was 14. I didn't take it, not because I didn't want to, but because my parents couldn't manage without me. They didn't say it outright, of course, they just dropped hints. My mom cried when she saw the acceptance letter, and my dad said, "No, that's great, but who's going to help your brother get back on track?" So I stayed. I deferred the program, then deferred again. Eventually, I stopped talking about it. Instead, I got a local job right after graduation, full-time, low pay, but steady. I started paying rent to my parents to help out. I picked up groceries, took my brother to his therapy sessions, covered late fees on bills when things got tight. I told myself it was temporary just until things got better, but things never got better. Because while I was working double shifts, my brother was sleeping until noon. While I was calculating utilities, he was out blowing money he didn't earn. While I was walking on eggshells to keep the family calm, he was setting off fireworks in every direction and getting away with it. I remember one night, coming home from work exhausted, only to find him on the couch playing video games, surrounded by pizza boxes. I asked him if he could help clean up. He shrugged and said, "It's your thing to care about that stuff." And when I told my mom, she just said, "He's going through a rough patch. Don't make things harder for him." Rough patch. He'd been in a rough patch for 6 years, and every time he messed up, skipped rehab, crashed another car, borrowed money he never paid back, they smoothed it over, paid his bail, called in favors, told family friends he was just finding his way. And I, who had sacrificed, who had given up dreams, was expected to understand. Again and again. It wasn't just the big things either. It was the birthday they forgot. The Christmas where my gift was a $10 mug, and his was a new iPhone. The graduation where no one took a photo of me because they were too busy arguing about how to get my brother out of his latest mess. It was the 1,000 paper cuts of never being centered in my own life. I don't remember when I stopped talking at the dinner table. I think it was gradual, realizing that no one listened, that if I mentioned my day, someone would interrupt with, "Oh, did you hear what happened to your brother today?" Like my life was filler between episodes of his drama. Even my emotions were filtered through his needs. If I was angry, I was told to be more patient. If I was sad, I was told I was lucky not to have his problems. I was trained, subtly, consistently, not to feel anything that might disrupt the image of a family harmony. But harmony built on silence is just control. Sometimes I wondered if I'd only have been born to balance him out, to be the example, the apology, the plan B. My parents never said they loved him more. But love isn't just words. Love is where the attention goes when everything falls apart. Love is who you make excuses for. Love is who you protect over and over, even when they don't deserve it. I never broke things, never got in trouble, never screamed, and because of that, they forgot I could break too. But I did, quietly, slowly, invisibly, every time I let go of a dream, every time I swallowed anger to keep the peace, every time I smiled through another family event that revolved around his recovery, his relapse, his redemption arc. People told me I was lucky to be so strong, so stable, so put together, but being the strong one is a lonely place when no one thinks to ask if you're okay. I started to notice it in the small moments, the way my exhaustion was never acknowledged, the way my successes were barely a blip in conversation, the way my presence was treated like background noise unless they needed something from me. It was like I didn't have permission to be human. If I came home tired, I was in a mood. If I voiced frustration, I was told I was being dramatic. If I ever admitted to struggling, the response was always the same. "You're the strong one, you can handle it." But I didn't want to always handle it. I didn't want to be the emotional pack mule for a family that refused to carry their own baggage. I wanted someone to ask me how I was doing, and actually mean it, but no one ever did, because in their eyes I was fine. Capable, responsible, predictable, and God forbid I ever messed up. There was no margin for error in my role. When I made a mistake, forgot to pay a bill, snapped at someone, failed to respond to a text, I was treated like I had betrayed the entire balance of the household. "You're not usually like this," my dad would say, disappointment dripping from every syllable. "We expect more from you," my mom added once, when I said I didn't feel like taking my brother to yet another meeting. That's when I realized I wasn't allowed to break. I wasn't allowed to be tired, or confused, or messy, or angry. Those emotions belonged to my brother. He had the monopoly on chaos. My role was to absorb, stabilize, and smile. And slowly, quietly, I began to shut down. I stopped sharing things about my day. I stopped bringing up exciting news because I knew it would be ignored, or worse, redirected back to whatever drama my brother had created that week. I remember telling my parents I got promoted at work. My mom said, "That's great, honey." And then, in the same breath, asked me if I could talk to my brother about applying to the same company. Like I was a stepping stone, not a person. Like my achievement only mattered if it could somehow be redirected to help him. That was the moment I began building walls. Not out of bitterness, out of survival. I started staying out later, not to party, but to avoid the tension. I'd sit at a coffee shop alone for hours just to feel like I had control over a moment. I took longer walks after work, ate dinner in my room more often, said less, felt more. But even that retreat was met with judgment. "You're being distant. You used to be so involved. Don't you care about your brother anymore?" It was like they could only see me through the lens of how useful I was to him. The moment I started setting boundaries, even quiet, unspoken ones, I became the problem. I wasn't running away from my family. I was slowly realizing I'd never really been allowed to belong. Because belonging means being seen, flaws and all. It means being able to fall apart without fear of being replaced. And I never had that. I had expectations, I had responsibilities. I had the role of the good child handed to me, like a permanent script I wasn't allowed to rewrite. And the longer I played it, the less I recognized myself. There were nights I lay awake wondering what it would be like to be held accountable to nothing, to fail and be forgiven, to take up space without apology. But I knew the answer. I saw it every day. That kind of freedom belonged to my brother, not to me. So I kept my mouth shut. I kept showing up, kept being the bigger person. Until one day, I didn't. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything finally cracked, though looking back, the fracture had been spreading for years. I was at work when the first text came through, then another, then a string of missed calls, Mom, Dad, even my aunt. My stomach didn't drop the way it used to. I'd been conditioned to these alerts, these last-minute family crises, that somehow always landed in my lap. I glanced at the screen and sighed. Same pattern, same chaos. "Call me as soon as you get this. It's about your brother." This time the story went like this. He'd gotten into a fight. Again. This time, though, it wasn't just a bar scuffle. It was something uglier, something public. Witnesses, police reports, legal threats, and rumors spreading like wildfire across social media that he may have gotten a girl pregnant, someone much younger, still in college. Her parents were threatening to press charges, and of course he was nowhere to be found. He'd left town days ago, supposedly in clear his head. No one knew where he was. His phone was off. His so-called friends weren't answering. And my parents, they were panicking. Not for the girl, not for the reputation of the family, not for the truth, but for how they could cover this up, how they could get him out of it. Within minutes, my phone rang again. This time I picked up. I knew they wouldn't stop until I did. "Do you know where he is?" my mother asked before even saying hello. "No," I said flatly. Silence. Then, "Well, can you try to find out?" "I haven't spoken to him in months." More silence. "That's a part of the problem," she said quietly. "You've been so distant, so cold lately. You don't check in. You don't try to talk to him. He doesn't have anyone." I blinked. Did I hear that right? "I'm sorry," I asked. "We're not blaming you," she said too quickly, in the same tone people use when they're exactly doing that. "But you're his sibling. He looks up to you. Maybe if you'd been more involved, more present, things wouldn't have gotten this bad." I stared at the wall in front of me, gripping the phone tightly. My body was calm, still. But inside, something old and bruised twisted sharply. It wasn't the first time. There had been so many versions of this exact conversation. Different messes, same narrative. When he failed out of college, he always did well in school. Maybe if you tutored him more, he wouldn't have fallen behind. When he wrecked the second family car, he was trying to be like you, responsible. He just didn't handle the pressure well. When he lied about a job and was caught, he was afraid of disappointing you. You're so successful now. He just didn't want to seem like a failure next to you. There was always a reason, and somehow I was always standing too close to the blast radius to not be implicated. This time they didn't say it outright, but the implication hung thick in the air. You weren't here to stop him. You didn't try hard enough. You didn't care enough. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I never did. I just listened, as they gently tiptoed around his actions and clumsily rerouted the guilt toward me. My dad got on the line a few minutes later. His voice was tight, controlled, like he was trying not to explode. "He's not a monster," he said. "He just needs guidance. He's still young." "He's 26, I replied. "Exactly. Still figuring things out." I didn't respond. "And look," he continued, I get it. You've been working hard. We're proud of you, okay? But you've sort of pulled away lately. And maybe he felt that. Maybe that's a part of why he's been acting out. He doesn't know how to ask for help. You're the older one. You've always been the stable one. Maybe if you reached out first..." There it was again. The oldest story in our family. One I knew by heart. My brother's actions weren't really his fault. Not fully. Not if you zoom out enough. They were reactions, symptoms, ripples caused by people around him. And because I had pulled away, after years of overextending, after begging for boundaries, I was now the villain in his latest saga. It didn't matter that I paid rent in a house he trashed. It didn't matter that I'd given up opportunities for him. It didn't matter that I'd been his unpaid chauffeur, tutor, therapist, and financial cushion. It didn't matter that I was tired, that I was worn down to the bone. What mattered was that I wasn't available this time, and that meant the blame had to fall somewhere. And sure as hell wasn't going to fall on him. So here we were again. Him, missing, them, scrambling, and me, expected to help, to fix, to understand. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear as they kept talking, voices rising and falling, worry-laced with veiled frustration. They didn't ask how I was. They didn't wonder what I was dealing with. They didn't even say please. They just assumed I would show up, because I always had. I don't remember the exact moment I snapped. There was no screaming, no dramatic monologue, just a weight in my chest that refused to sit quietly anymore. They kept talking on the phone, words spiraling, accusations dressed up as a concern. "You've changed. You used to care more. Your brother looked up to you." And for once, I didn't hold it in. "I've changed?" I said, my voice low but sharp. "Of course I've changed. I had to." There was silence on the other end. I gave up years of my life trying to keep this family from collapsing. I gave up my scholarship, my plans, my peace. I was never allowed to be tired or angry or selfish. Everything I did was for this house, for him. And every time I needed even a fraction of that back, silence. More silence. I watched him crash and burn over, and each time you told me to understand, to forgive, to support. And I did. I always did. But none of you ever stopped to ask what it cost me. My dad tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "You talk about me pulling away like it's a betrayal, but have you ever once asked why? Have you ever once looked at how this family operates? How everything bends around his chaos while I'm expected to be the glue?" I could feel my throat tightening, but I didn't stop. You all chose him over and over again. Not just when he was in crisis, but when I was too. I was hurting too. I was drowning, and none of you saw it. I let that sit there, let the silence stretch long and uncomfortable. "I'm done," I finally said. "Done with what?" my mom whispered. "Done playing the good child, done carrying the weight, done pretending this is a family I feel safe in." And I hung up. Cutting contact with your own family feels like ripping off your own skin. It doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels shameful, like failure, like treason. I expected to feel anger, maybe relief, but mostly I just felt empty, a kind of deep, echoing quiet. I sat on the floor for a long time after that call, staring at nothing, letting the decision settle into my bones. The next morning I blocked their numbers, deleted the family group chat, ignored the guilt-drenched texts that trickled in for days, then stopped coming altogether. No one showed up at my door. No one sent a letter. They let me disappear. And that hurt more than I expected. But slowly, that silence turned into space. Space to breathe. To rebuild. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I didn't want to fall back into old patterns. because I wanted to learn how to take up space in my own life. It was strange at first saying things out loud that I had only ever whispered inside my head. I don't think they ever really knew me. I was afraid to make mistakes because I thought love would be taken away. I don't think I know how to want things just for me, but over time it got easier. My therapist didn't try to fix me. She just held up a mirror. And I started to see myself clearly for the first time. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, the ones I'd neglected because I was always putting out family fires. Some welcomed me back with open arms, others had moved on, and that was okay. I spent weekends doing nothing and didn't feel guilty. I started dating again, not to fill a void, but to explore connection. Eventually I met someone. Kind, steady, present. He listened when I talked, not out of obligation, but interest. He didn't try to solve me, just stood beside me. And for the first time I felt safe letting someone see the parts of me that weren't strong, the parts that were scared, messy, software. It wasn't perfect. Healing rarely is. There were nights I missed the comfort of routine, even when that routine had been built on resentment. There were holidays I spent alone staring at old photos, wondering if I had made the right choice. But every time I second-guessed, I came back to one truth. I was no longer shrinking myself to fit into a place that never made room for me. And that alone made it worth it. It started with a voicemail. 3 months of silence, no birthdays, no texts, not even a forwarded meme. Then suddenly, his voice, shaky, fast, like someone trying to outrun the panic in his own throat. "Hey, it's me. Look, I know we haven't talked in a while, and I know things didn't end great, but I really, really need to talk to you. Please, just call me back." I didn't. 2 days later, a message came from my mother. "Your brother's going through something. Could you at least hear him out?" That was Rich, the same brother they used to shield from everything. The same one who made mistake after mistake and always landed on his feet because someone else cushioned the fall. Me, them, anyone but him. But something had changed. This wasn't the usual mess, not a bad breakup, not another failed job. It was bigger, uglier. Bank loans, gambling debts, a failed business venture with friends who ghosted the moment money dried up. And worst of all, his name was on everything. He didn't just screw up, he'd legally sunk himself. And now, with nowhere else to turn, he came knocking on the door he helped push me out of. The second voicemail was quieter, slower. "I get it if you hate me. I know I wasn't there for you when I should have been. I know I took a lot for granted. But please, I'm scared. I don't know what to do." I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't care, but because I needed to make sure I wouldn't respond from old wounds. I took a walk, breathed, let the ache settle, then let it go. When I finally called him, he picked up on the first ring. His voice cracked. "Thank you," he said, like I'd already agreed to save him. "I haven't said yes," I replied. A beat of silence. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out broken. "Right, yeah, no, I wasn't sure you'd even answer." I let him talk, about how the investors bailed, how the repayments stacked, how the stress got so bad he stopped sleeping, how he'd begged Mom and Dad for help, but they were tapped out. Emotionally, financially, all of it. "I've never seen Dad like that," he admitted. "He just shut down." I wanted to say, "Now you know how I felt." But I didn't. "What do you need?" I asked instead. He exhaled like that alone was a lifeline. "Alone? Just something to buy me time. I swear I'll pay you back." He started listing numbers, legal fees, late payments, credit card debt, each one heavier than the last. "I can't lose everything," he whispered. "I know I messed up, but you've always been the one who kept us steady. I need that now. I need you." And just like that, the roles reversed. The golden child, the one they wrapped in excuses and exceptions, was finally out of excuses. And I had something more powerful than money. Clarity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind him of every time he laughed off my pain or brushed past my boundaries or stood silent while I was shouldering what he broke. I just said, "No." He froze. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I can't give you what you're asking. Not this time, not anymore." "But you always..." "I always helped. I always gave, even when it cost me everything. That's not strength, that was survival, and I'm not surviving like that anymore. He was quiet for a long time. Then softly, I'm really that alone? And that was the part that hurt, because he wasn't a villain. He was a child who'd never been taught how to be anything else. But I wasn't his parent, I wasn't his safety net. I was his sibling, and I had my own life to protect now. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said. I really am, and I hope you get the help you need, but it won't be at my expense. He didn't yell, he didn't cry, he just hung up. And for the first time in years, I didn't chase after the silence. I let it sit, let it echo, let it do what it was supposed to do. Because this time, it wasn't my job to clean it up. After the call ended, I sat still for a long time, not because I was second-guessing myself, but because the silence that followed felt heavier than I expected. Not oppressive, not empty, just final, like closing a book I'd read too many times, hoping the ending might change. And for a moment, I thought about all the other times I'd said yes. I remembered the time I gave him money to cover rent, money I'd saved for my own move-out deposit. He promised he'd pay me back in 2 weeks. I never saw it again. Or the semester I dropped out of college because my parents said they couldn't afford both of us being in school and he needed more help. I got a job, paid bills, cooked meals, kept things running while he coasted through classes and partied with friends. Or the time he'd totaled my car and said he'd only borrowed it for an hour, didn't even have a license at the time. I paid the deductible. He never apologized. It was always like that. I made space and he took it. I swallowed my dream so he could live his. And every time I tried to bring it up, gently, carefully, trying not to sound bitter, I got the same thing. He didn't mean it. He's going through a rough time. You're the strong one. You can handle it. But being the strong one had worn me down to dust. Strength had become their excuse for why I never got to fall apart. So number I wasn't going to help this time. Not because I wanted him to suffer, not because I hated him, but because I had finally learned what love wasn't. Love isn't cleaning up someone else's mess every time they fall. Love isn't sacrificing your own peace so someone else can avoid discomfort. Love isn't saying yes when every cell in your body is begging you to say no. Sometimes love is letting someone hit the bottom, because it's the only way they'll ever learn how to rise. I didn't feel triumphant. This wasn't revenge in the dramatic sense. It was a quiet refusal to keep bleeding for people who only noticed when I stopped. A few days later, he sent a short message. I get it. I really do. I just wish I had seen things sooner. I didn't reply, because this wasn't about getting through to him. This was about getting back to me. I went on with my life. Therapy, friends, morning runs, dinners with people who didn't expect me to be anything but myself. And slowly the guilt faded. Not because it stopped knocking, but because I stopped answering the door. Somewhere in that stillness, I realized something I'd never said out loud. I never got the chance to be a sibling. I was too busy being the safety net, the backup plan, the emotional shock absorber. And I was done. Maybe one day he'd get his life together. Maybe he'd find a way out of the hole he'd dug. I hoped he would. But I also knew I wouldn't be the one lowering the rope this time. This time, the rope was mine. And I was using it to climb out, not pull someone else up. Because sometimes the only way to break the cycle is to stop spinning with it and walk away. I kept thinking about the word no, how foreign it used to feel on my tongue, how wrong it felt to deny anyone something they asked for, especially him. Growing up, I was praised for being low maintenance. So easy, my mother used to say. Never gives us trouble. I wore it like a badge, thought it meant I was good, worthy, safe. But being the one who never gave trouble just meant my pain didn't make the radar. My needs were too quiet. And when I finally spoke up, they called it ungrateful, harsh, cold. But saying no this time didn't make me cold. It made me whole. Because no wasn't rejection. It was recognition. That my limits mattered. That my peace wasn't a bargaining chip. That I wasn't a spare life vest for people who never learned how to swim. A week later, I got another message. From my father this time. It was short. I know things are strained, but he's your brother. Just think about it. And for the first time, I didn't think about how to fix it. I didn't replay the guilt. I didn't imagine what they'd say behind my back. I just let the message sit unread, like a letter addressed to the version of me that no longer existed. That version used to break her own back just to keep the family standing. This version? She lets it crumble if that's what it takes to finally build something real. So no, I didn't swoop in. I didn't become the hero. I didn't return to play the same roles in the same broken play. I simply stayed where I was, rooted, solid, free. It didn't happen all at once. The healing, it came slowly in pieces, through those quiet decisions that nobody saw. Like the mornings I woke up and no longer reached for my phone to check if my family had messaged. Like the afternoons I spent walking with friends, laughing, not flinching at every shadow of guilt. Like the nights I lay in bed beside someone who saw me, not as the fixer, not as the strong one, but simply as me. The world didn't change, but I did. And in that shift, I found freedom. I stopped explaining myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped shrinking to make others feel big. I stopped believing that blood was thicker than peace. Instead, I chose people who showed up, people who didn't flinch at my stories, who didn't need a filtered version of my family's chaos to feel comfortable, who said, "That sounds hard," instead of, "But they're your family." There was my partner, steady, present, kind, the one who never made me feel like I had to earn love with silence. There were my friends, my chosen siblings, who remembered my birthday without reminders, who showed up at my door with soup when I was sick, who sent me memes at 2 a.m. just to make me smile. And slowly, they became my family. Not out of duty, but out of love. I'd always believed family was something you were born into. Now I knew better. Family is something you build, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, choice by choice. So when my brother reached out again, I was in a place where I could answer, not out of obligation, but out of peace. The message was short. "Hey, I've been thinking about everything. I just want you to know. I'm sorry for all of it." There was no ask, no hint of money or saving or guilt, just words, honest, overdue words. I replied, "Thank you. I hope you're doing okay." We talked a little after that, slowly, carefully, like two people learning to speak a language they were never taught. He told me he was in therapy now, trying to unpack things. He never blamed Mom or Dad, but I could hear the shift in him, the way he questioned things he used to defend. "I don't know why they always put it all on you," he said once. "I didn't see it then. I do now." I didn't cry, but something inside me softened. I didn't invite him back into my life completely. I didn't rush to fix what had broken, but I forgave him, quietly, fully. Not for him, for me, because carrying bitterness is just another way of carrying them. And I was done carrying people who never learned how to walk beside me. I didn't hear from my parents. Not directly, but I heard from a cousin that they still believed I had overreacted, that I'd chosen ego over family, that I had abandoned them, and maybe that's what they'll always believe. But I stopped needing them to rewrite the story, because the version I carry now, the one where I chose peace, chose myself, chose love that wasn't conditional, that version is finally true. Healing didn't come in a single breakthrough. It arrived quietly, through peaceful mornings, undramatic conversations, and the slow realization that I no longer needed to explain myself. I stopped waiting for apologies. I stopped craving recognition from people who only saw me when I was useful. I built my own circle, my own rhythm, a partner who saw me clearly, friends who showed up, no strings attached, a life where I could laugh without guilt and rest without fear. When my brother reached out, it wasn't to ask for anything, just a simple, "I'm sorry." And in that moment, I realized I didn't need more. We spoke slowly, like people learning a new language. He was in therapy. He was beginning to see how things had been. He didn't excuse it. He didn't blame. He just saw. That was enough for me to forgive, not to forget, not to fix, but to let go for myself. I never heard from our parents again, but I also stopped needing to. Their silence no longer defined me. Their version of love, built into favoritism and sacrifice, no longer held weight in my world, because I'd built something better. My family isn't perfect. It's not holiday card material, but it's real. It's dinners filled with laughter, friends who call just to say they thought of me, a partner who knows my story and holds it gently, and me, living a life where I no longer have to earn peace through pain. You don't owe loyalty to people who use love as a mask for favoritism. Sometimes, the best family is the one you build yourself. And if no one's ever told you, it's okay to walk away from the people who taught you love was conditional. It's okay to start over. And it's more than okay to choose yourself. Always.